Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 33. Today, I want to talk about how to use AI to write good content. So, one of the things you might be seeing a lot of talk about lately is how everything written by AI looks fake. AI looks fake. I talked about it actually, I think, even the other day. Well, I spent some time over the last couple days and used AI to help me write content. And there is a way to do it where your writing not only looks um, good and sounds good, but it is truly your content, not AI. And how you do that is you use the AI to fill in where you're weaker. You use it to support your writing, not to do your writing for you. So, in my case, for example, I have never been the best at writing the first draft of anything. In college, I was a horrible procrastinator because getting the initial ideas down on paper to me was the most challenging task of all. And it still is. And I don't know if it's writer's block, what it might be, but I've always struggled with getting the initial concept down. But where I excel, and I've always been incredibly good at this, is taking any piece of existing content and making it better, much to the chagrin of many of the people I've worked with in the past. I can basically take a piece of content, no matter what it is, whether it's written content, whether it's an ad, visual, whatever type of creative. I can take it, I can look at it, read it, and I can make it better. And I've taken content from some incredibly talented people and made it better. I'm also a fairly good writer. Well, the challenge, once again, for me has always been getting started. So, AI has actually provided an incredible solution for me. And what that is I use AI to take my idea and draft it, put it into its first rough structure, rough outline, and then use that as the framework to then go back and rewrite effectively from scratch, but using that as the guideline, as the template, if you will. And what it does is it allows me to create very good content much easier than I would and much faster than I would be able to without the use of AI. So, for example, I just wrote a white paper on lead generation, basically an entire how to guide beginning to end on lead generation, how it differs from demand generation and PPC, where it fits in, how to go about it, strategies to use, tactics, how to build your own lead gen campaigns, everything else, kind of the whole 9 yards. So, I'm just going to walk you through how I went about that. So I'm going to share my screen and just show you the prompting I used. So first thing I did, by the way, is I used a custom GPT that I had already set up before, specifically designed for writing um, marketing content. So if you watch my podcast from the other day, I showed how to build your own custom GPT for a specific purpose. Well, this is a GPT I created specifically for writing marketing content. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it up here. And so here's the prompt I use. So let's write a white paper on the value of lead generation, what it is, how it works, why it is an important aspect of a demand generation campaign, do's and don'ts, how it compares to PPC, and how to get started developing a successful lead gen campaign. Let's write it section by section, total length of approximately 5 pages. I want this to be a back and forth. As we get each section finished, we'll then move on to the next. So let's start with the prompt here. I'm letting the AI know that this is going to be a white paper. That's a specific style and type of writing, so it's going to format it as such. You told it what the topic is, and then all the different things I want to hit, what it is, how it works, why it's important, do's and don'ts, comparisons, etc. And then here's one of the key parts. Let's write it section by section. The reason for that part is what I've found using AI to write over the last few years is that if you just give it a prompt and tell it, let's write this, it's going to spit the entire thing out at you at once. And in doing so, it tends to be pretty crappy on that first pass. Whereas I've also found if you have it go section by section, it gives you the time to interact, go back and forth with the AI to get a good outline of whatever it is you want. So the AI came back with it. Got it. Let's start strong with a solid introduction for the white paper. Here's how I'll structure the first section. And it gave the value of lead generation, introduction, and what the topics will be covered. I said, okay, let's move to the next section. It wrote the next section. And I said, okay, I realized that when it wrote its lead generation process, it came out with attract, capture, qualify, nurture. That's great, but is missing a key component, which is targeting. You need to have a good, solid ICP for any lead gen campaign if you want to be successful. So I told the AI, um, let's add target before attract and talk about developing an ICP. It then went back and rewrote that piece. On and on and on, back and forth with the AI. We wrote all the individual sections of the white paper, and this then provided me with an outline that I could then use to write the paper. So what I do is after this is done, I copy and paste the entire thing into a just Microsoft Word, and then I use that to do my editing. Now, here's the key. I could have taken its initial output, called it a white paper, and said, "Okay, here we go." And bear with me a second. I'm going to switch to a different screen here. But I could have done that and then just left it at that and said, "Ta-da! Here it is." Well, the catch is, it would have been a crappy piece of content. It would have obviously looked like a piece of AI content, and it would not have honestly provided much value to anyone because they could just go into Chat GPT themselves, type in a similar prompt about lead generation, got them the answers. It would not have incorporated my expertise in the industry or anything else. So this next step, then, once you paste it, is to go in and rewrite line by line the entire thing. And what you end up doing through that is it's kind of like if you're given a first draft in college and you turn it into your teacher and they come back and say, "Yeah, this is crap, go redo it." You take the time to sit down and rewrite. Now, once again, it's a time consuming process. If you're trying to use AI just to skip all the work, well, you're going to end up with content that is very obviously AI. It's going to read like AI. And as I said, it's not going to have any value. But if you use it as the template, it allows you to then go create a piece of content like this, and all said and done, end up turning into a 16-page white paper on kind of every aspect of AI. Once again, the do's and don'ts. All right, we'll just do a quick walkthrough. So the complete guide to lead generation is where it worked at. I still have a little bit, probably about an hour's left of editing to do on this before I think it's ready to go live, get published. But we really did cover what is lead generation, how does it work, the role of lead generation in demand generation campaigns, the do's and don'ts for maximizing success, lead generation versus PPC, practical steps to develop a high performing lead generation strategy, pitfalls of lead generation and data regulations, and what to do with your new leads. So I kick off with what is lead generation, give a background, walk through the process of targeting and what that entails, attracting, capturing, qualifying, and nurturing the types of leads. Everyone has their own definition. I defined them for the purpose of this paper. How it fits into demand generation campaigns, relationship between demand gen and lead gen. A couple examples there. Why lead gen is critical to the success of a demand generation campaign, measurable ROI, supporting sales teams, personalized engagement, feed demand generation insights, etc. So, for example, these headlines, it all came originally from Chat GPT, and it had anywhere from a half a sentence to a sentence worth of information following each one. Each of these, I will go back and rewrite. Integrating lead generation and demand generation campaigns, aligned content, clear CTAs, multi-channel approach, lead scoring. Once again, I went through and rewrote all of this myself. The do's and don'ts of lead generation. Do know your audience. Do offer genuine value. Do use clear and compelling CTAs. Do leverage automation strategy. Do test and optimize continuously. Do align marketing sales teams. A lot of this I added in. The AI didn't put in there originally, but once again, that's where I'm using the AI to support my writing, not using AI to write for me. And the don'ts: don't gate everything, don't overload forms, don't use clickbait or misleading tactics. Don't forget mobile users, don't ignore follow up, don't treat all leads the same. And then we get into lead generation versus PPC. What is PPC? Key differences between lead generation and PPC, how they complement each other, when to focus on each one, then how to develop a successful lead generation campaign. Here I go through and literally lay out the framework for how to build a lead generation campaign from start to finish that will be successful if you go through, follow the steps, put it together, and execute on it. Everywhere from Once again, from targeting and creating, defining your goals, developing your ICP, all the way through to the driving traffic, nurturing, testing, tracking, optimizing. Then get into the pitfalls of lead generation, data regulation. Some of the big pitfalls are focusing on quantity over quality. Here's one of the biggest ones you see: ignoring lead nurturing. Anyone who's ever worked in the lead gen industry at all knows that many clients get a lead and say, oh, this lead was crap because it didn't immediately buy something. Nurturing is absolutely critical to the lead gen process. Overcomplicated campaigns, failing to align with sales, neglecting data hygiene, on and on and on. Then I get a bit into GDPR, CCPA, and regional laws, and then best practices to ensure compliance. Once again, I'm not a lawyer. I make sure to call that out and say consult a lawyer because I don't know all the details of the laws around this. I know the best practices from a marketing standpoint. And then what to do with your leads after you generate them, how to categorize them, how to build a nurturing plan, what that should be, communicating with your sales team, measuring and analyzing performance, continuing the relationship post sale, and then finally a summary and conclusion. All said and done, have a solid white paper here that's going to end up incredibly informative to anyone who works within sales and marketing for getting a better understanding of lead gen. And for anyone who's interested in trying it themselves, it gives them a great guide that kind of covers all the topics necessary to get started with their own lead generation campaigns. Now, all said and done, because took the time to go back and actually write this myself, not just use an AI to develop it, what it then did is it allowed me to not only make a piece of content that reads well, but it reads in my style. It's very distinctly me as you read through it because I wrote about 80% of every word in the paper. When it was originally drafted by AI, there was about, I think, 3,000 words or so was the word count. By the time I was, well, at where I am near finished with it, we're at about 4,200 words. Now, I didn't just add 1,184 words to it. I actually wrote or rewrote a total of over 3,000 words. In fact, if I then ran it through Grammarly's AI and plagiarism checker to both make sure I didn't have accidental plagiarism from stuff the AI incorporated, as well as to see how much it read like an AI. And the beauty is, taking the time to do it like that, I was able to get an article that, all said and done, came out with, well, I'll show you the results actually right here I will go ahead and show you the results within Grammarly so you can see the outcome. All said and done, it ended up with a number of sections that resemble AI text. But mind you, where it does is actually kind of funny. A lot of the areas where it says it resembled AI text was actually text that I wrote. And it just came about 50-50 on whether or not it was actually AI written text or not. But it was all small sections, no more than a sentence or two, because I went back and rewrote the entire thing using the original AI output as my starting point, not as the conclusion. So it's rerunning the AI and plagiarism check because I refreshed it. But here's the beauty: it says 6% of text matches external sources. That always scares me because I get worried about plagiarism. Well, I got lucky. All of those is where it happens to be a single line, like a steady stream of potential customers ready to. Okay, yes, there's a detected reference there. Well, I use the same words as other people in a number of instances. But as you go through, what I notice is none of the text, and once again, this is, I wrote this. It's not just about collecting names and email addresses. It's about building meaningful connections with people who are most likely to benefit from your products and service and beginning to develop relationships. It caught this first line as plagiarism, if you will. Something to be very careful with if you are using AI for your writing. Make sure you run a plagiarism check on it because AIs will plagiarize. And at the end of the day, if you publish the content, that's on you, not on the AI. And so once again, going through all the sections where it said it looked like AI, this is probably the biggest section of all. It's about one paragraph. And interestingly, that is not AI written, which is kind of funny. Um, but all said and done, the total result was that about 20% of the text has patterns that resemble AI text. And it lets you know that where it matches AI, that it doesn't necessarily mean it was AI written, but that the format is similar to what an AI would write. Well, all said and done, ended up with an article that looks 20% AI, and I would argue that 20% of the content in here is AI. And that's not a bad thing. That was what I use once again to take my original idea and get content on paper so that I had a place to work from. And then once again, 6% of text matches external sources. I checked each and every place where it says it matched to verify that it wasn't plagiarized. Because once again, that is a risk when you're using AI. If you are using AI to write for you, it will plagiarize, and that's on you. So, highly recommend, it doesn't matter which one you use, but use some kind of AI and plagiarism check. If you're getting 30, 40, 50% or more of your content showing up as has patterns that resemble AI text, everyone reading is just going to go, oh, hey, look, they punched something into Chat GPT and then, are trying to pass it off as their own. And it's obvious, it'll be glaringly obvious. But if you use AI to supplement your own talent in areas where you may be weaker or slower or wherever it may be, but don't rely on it to do the work for you, you can generate a 16-page white paper with only about 6 hours of work. Versus, had I tried to do the initial draft of this all on my own, I probably would have spent at least 10 hours staring at a blank screen, trying to figure out how to get started. I then would have spent another probably 3 to 4 hours typing out 15 pages of content. And then I would still have to go back and spend another 5, 6 hours editing. Doing it this way, I was able to cut the writer's block time and cut the initial draft time down to, mind you, the back and forth with the AI still took about 2 hours to just generate the initial draft. Because once again, I didn't just say, give me this. We walked through section by section, tweaking back and forth, aligning it, developing a custom AI model to build it, etc. It's still a process. It still takes time, but it allows you once again to create stuff that might be harder for you to do or be much more time consuming without it. And I think that is the key to using AI properly. Use it as another tool in your process. Use it as a creative tool for idea generation. Use it as a editing tool. Use it as an expansion tool when you have an idea and you're not sure where to go with it. Go ask your AI, hey, give me 10 different ways to think about this and throw a paragraph in there that you wrote. See what it spits out and then use that to generate more ideas. But then the big key is whatever the output is from your AI, do not use it directly. It's the most obvious thing in the world, and it will be crap content. AIs might get better. It might get to the point where you can just use the output directly and be happy with it and have it work out beautifully. It's not there yet. It's the most obvious thing in the world. And, you see it every day. You see content out there that's just purely AI created. It's pretty obvious. And honestly, it's lazy. What is the need for having a marketer, for having someone who knows how to write, for having someone with talent if an AI could just do the work? Well, the truth is there isn't any. So if you're using AI to create your content, stop. It looks bad, and if you're doing it at work, and especially if no one knows you're doing it, you will get caught. And when you do, it's not going to be pretty. But when you use AI as a tool to support you, to basically just be another method of writing, or not a method of what's the word I'm looking for here. It really is just a tool, right? It's another tool in your toolkit for writing. If you use it as such, it can be incredibly valuable. It's kind of like, I remember going back in the day, one of my first PR jobs at a PR agency. My boss would tell me, hey, write a press release on XYZ. I would go and I would write a full press release on XYZ. He would then take my press release, and I was entry level at the time. So it was, it was pretty good, but wasn't amazing. He would then go back and spend an hour or two rewriting it completely using my press release as a template. And the first time he did it, it kind of bugged me. And I asked him about once, I said, "Hey, if you were going to write the press release, why didn't you just do it in the first place?" He says, "Simple. What do you think I'm paying you for?" I learned a valuable lesson there. Use the resources at your disposal. He used me to draft press releases for him to save himself time. And you know what? That was smart of him. He was way too busy and didn't have the time to be doing this stuff himself, so he used me to draft it. The same way lawyers use paralegals to draft legal stuff from and do legal research. As marketers, we should be using AIs as our assistants, as our paralegals, if you will. Use it as our assistant account executives and have it do the first draft. And once they do, then use that as the starting point to actually create a good piece of content. This piece of content, all said and done, is going to turn into, well, what's basically a 16-page white paper. But then I'm also, with the assistance of AI, going to cut it down into another number of shorter forms, um, shorter form pieces of content, probably 5 or 6 different pieces of content from the different sections that can be used for social media, can be used for websites, can be used for landing pages, can be used for pitch decks. It can be used for a ton of different things. Starting with a long form piece of content, one of the beauties is you can always cut it down and then use it for more purposes. So all said and done, this one piece of content will turn into probably 30 to 40 total pieces of content by the time I'm finished with it. And that's going to be everywhere from social media posts to blog posts to the white paper itself to email campaigns, etc. And that is the value of being creating a large piece of content using AI. You can do that incredibly effectively, and you can actually write good content with AI if you don't overly rely on it. So that's all I want to talk about today. Hope you all have a wonderful evening. God bless, and talk to you tomorrow. Take care.